What happens when a guest walks onto a respected talk show and completely disrespects everything the host stands for? In just 31 seconds of one shocking comment, Meghan Markle went from honored guest to being escorted off the set of the Diane Sawyer Show. This is the story of how one interview went from friendly conversation to absolute chaos. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think about this whole situation. Now let's get into it. The studio lights were bright that afternoon. Diane Sawyer sat in her usual chair, calm and professional as always. She had done thousands of interviews before this one. She knew how to make guests feel comfortable. She knew how to ask the right questions. And she definitely knew how to handle difficult moments with grace. But nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. Meghan walked onto the set wearing a designer outfit that probably cost more than most people make in a month. She had this look on her face. Not quite a smile. More like someone who thought they were doing everyone a favor just by showing up. Diane stood up to greet her, extending her hand with that warm smile she is known for. Meghan took it, but barely. It was one of those handshakes that says, "I'm only doing this because I have to." They sat down. The camera started rolling. Diane began with a simple question. A softball, really. She said, "Thank you so much for being here today. We are so excited to talk with you. How are you doing?" Pretty simple, right? The kind of question that usually gets a nice friendly answer to warm things up. But Meghan paused. She looked at Diane like the question itself was beneath her. Then she said, "I am here. Are we not? I suppose that answers your question." The studio got quiet. You could feel the temperature change. Diane kept her smile though. She is a professional. She has dealt with much worse than a rude response. She tried again. She said, "Well, we have a lot to talk about today. Your new projects, your life, everything our viewers want to know about." Meghan cut her off. She actually cut her off. She said, "Let me stop you right there, Diane. I think we need to establish something first. I am not here to discuss what your viewers want. I am here to discuss what I want to discuss. There is a difference." Diane blinked. She kept her composure, but you could see something shift in her eyes. She said, "Of course. This is a conversation. What would you like to talk about?" Meghan leaned back in her chair like she owned the place. She said, "I want to talk about how the media has treated me, how people like you have made millions off my name without ever really understanding who I am or what I have been through." People like you? Those three words hung in the air. Diane had interviewed presidents. She had interviewed world leaders. She had sat across from people who had survived unimaginable tragedies and told their stories with dignity. And now she was being lumped into some category by someone who seemed more interested in playing victim than having an actual conversation. Diane took a breath. She said, "I understand that media attention can be difficult. That is actually something I would love to explore with you today. How has that experience shaped you?" Meghan laughed. Not a friendly laugh. A mocking one. She said, "Shaped me? Diane, it has not shaped me. It has attacked me. And sitting here, across from you, someone who has built a career on asking invasive questions and prying into people's private lives, I have to wonder why I even agreed to this." The crew behind the cameras started looking at each other. This was not normal. Guests do not talk to Diane Sawyer like this. Diane, to her credit, stayed calm. She said, "I appreciate your honesty, Meghan. I really do. But I think there might be a misunderstanding here. My goal has always been to tell stories truthfully and to give people a platform to share their experiences in their own words. That is what I hope to do today." Meghan rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes. She said, "A platform? You think you are giving me a platform? I do not need your platform, Diane. I have my own voice. I have my own following. People listen to me because they want to, not because you are handing me some microphone like you are doing me a favor." Diane nodded slowly. She said, "I absolutely agree that you have your own voice. That is why we invited you here. We thought it would be a good opportunity for you to use that voice to connect with our audience." Meghan leaned forward now. Her tone got sharper. She said, "Your audience. Let me tell you something about your audience, Diane. They are the same people who have sent me death threats. They are the same people who have written horrible things about me online. They are the same people who have judged every single thing I have ever done without knowing a single fact. So forgive me if I am not particularly interested in connecting with them." Diane kept her expression neutral, but her jaw tightened just a bit. She said, "I think you might be surprised. Many people watching are genuinely interested in hearing your side of things. They want to understand your perspective." Meghan scoffed. She said, "My perspective? My perspective is that I have been treated unfairly from day one. My perspective is that no matter what I do or say, people twist it into something negative. My perspective is that I walked into a situation that was set up for me to fail, and when I did not fail, when I actually succeeded and became more popular than people expected, that is when the real attacks began. Diane tried to redirect. She said, "Can we talk about some of the specific challenges you faced? I think that would help people understand." Meghan cut her off again. She said, "Specific challenges? Where do I even start? Do we talk about the constant criticism of everything I wore? Do we talk about the racist undertones in so many articles written about me? Do we talk about how I was expected to just smile and wave and never have an opinion about anything?" Diane said, "Those all sound like important topics." Meghan snapped back. "They are not topics, Diane. They are my life. And the problem with interviews like this is that you want to treat them like topics, like they are just interesting things to discuss over tea. But these are real things that happen to a real person. Me." Diane took another breath. She was starting to lose patience, but she was not going to show it. She said, "I hear you, Meghan, and I want to make sure we treat this conversation with the seriousness it deserves. That is why I am here. That is why we are having this discussion." Meghan shook her head. She said, "You do not hear me. If you heard me, you would understand that the very format of this interview is part of the problem. You sit there with your questions, your agenda, your time limits, and you expect me to perform for you, to give you good sound bites that you can use for your promos. That is not a conversation. That is an interrogation." The producer behind the camera made a hand signal to Diane. "Keep going. Try to steer this back." Diane saw it. She said, "I can assure you, this is not an interrogation. We just want to hear from you, in your own words, with no agenda except to understand." Meghan stood up suddenly. She said, "You want to understand? Fine. Let me make this very clear. I came here today because I was told this would be a respectful conversation. I was told that I would be treated with dignity. Instead, I walk in, and immediately I can feel the judgment. The way you looked at me when I walked in, the way your staff whispered, I know what people think of me, and I am tired of pretending like it does not bother me." Diane remained seated. She said, "I apologize if anything we did made you feel uncomfortable. That was never our intention." Meghan pointed at her. Actually pointed. She said, "Your intentions do not matter, Diane. What matters is the result. And the result is that once again, I am put in a position where I have to defend myself, where I have to explain myself, where I have to prove that I am worthy of basic human respect." Diane finally stood up. She said, "Meghan, nobody here thinks you need to prove anything. We invited you because we respect you, and we want to have a meaningful conversation, but I need you to understand that a conversation requires both people to engage respectfully." Meghan laughed again. That same mocking laugh. She said, "Respectfully? You want to talk to me about respect? You, who has made a career out of asking people about the worst moments of their lives? You, who has pushed people to tears on camera? You want to lecture me about respect?" Diane's expression hardened. She said, "I have always treated my guests with respect. Even when asking difficult questions, that is part of my job, to ask the questions that need to be asked, but I have never, ever tried to hurt anyone or make anyone feel less than." Meghan crossed her arms. She said, "Maybe you do not see it that way. Maybe in your mind, you are just doing your job. But from where I am standing, your job has contributed to a culture where people like me are constantly under attack, where our every move is analyzed and criticized, where we cannot breathe without someone writing a think piece about it." Diane said, "I understand your frustration with media culture. I really do. But I am not your enemy here." Meghan shot back, "You are not my friend either. Let us be clear about that." The tension was unbearable now. The crew did not know what to do. Diane said, "I never claimed to be your friend. I claim to be a journalist who wants to have an honest conversation. There is a difference." Meghan said, "An honest conversation? Okay, let us be honest then. The honest truth is that you invited me here, hoping I would say something controversial, something you could use for ratings, something that would make headlines. You did not invite me here because you care about me or my story. You invited me here because my name sells." Diane's voice got firmer. She said, "That is not true. We invite guests because we believe their stories matter, because we think our audience will benefit from hearing different perspectives." Meghan talked over her. She said, "My name is in the title of this segment, is it not? You promoted this interview using my name. You are going to use clips of this for weeks, so do not stand there and pretend this is about anything other than what it has always been about. Profit, Diane said. Every interview we do is promoted. That is how television works. It does not mean we do not care about the substance of the conversation. Meghan was getting louder now. She said, "The substance? What substance? We have been sitting here, and you have barely let me finish a sentence without trying to redirect me or reframe what I am saying. That is not substance. That is control. You want to control the narrative," Diane said. "I have not tried to control anything. I have tried to have a conversation, which is becoming increasingly difficult." Meghan stepped closer to Diane. She said, "Difficult? You think this is difficult? Try living my life for one day. Try dealing with what I have dealt with. Then come talk to me about difficult." Diane held her ground. She said, "I am not comparing our experiences, but I am asking you to work with me here. We can still have a productive conversation if we both try." Meghan said, "I am done trying. I am done playing these games. I am done pretending like these interviews serve any purpose other than to feed the machine that chews people up and spits them out." Diane said, "If that is how you feel, then maybe we should take a break." Meghan said, "A break? No, Diane. What we should do is end this right now, because this is pointless. You are never going to understand. None of you are." Diane said, "Help me understand then. Talk to me." Meghan shook her head. She said, "I have been talking. You just have not been listening." Diane looked at Meghan for a long moment, the kind of look that said she was choosing her next words very carefully. She said, "I have been listening to every word you have said, but listening also means being able to respond. And right now, you are not giving me the chance to do that." Meghan threw her hands up. She said, "Oh, here we go. Now I am the one being unreasonable. Of course, it is always my fault, right? I am too sensitive. I am too emotional. I am too much." That is what people always say about women like me who refuse to just sit quietly and accept whatever is thrown at them. Diane said, "I never said you were being unreasonable. I said this conversation is difficult, and it is, for both of us." Meghan said, "Difficult for you? Please. You get to go home after this and sleep just fine. I am the one who has to live with the consequences of everything that gets said here today. Every word I say will be picked apart. Every expression on my face will be analyzed. You know that. Yet you sit there acting like we are on equal footing." Diane kept her voice steady. She said, "You are right that our situations are different, but that does not mean I do not care about how this conversation goes. I do care. Very much." Meghan turned away from her. She walked a few steps toward the edge of the set. Then she turned back around. She said, "You care about your reputation. You care about your show. You care about your legacy. But do you care about me? About what happens to me after I walk out of here? I doubt it." Diane said, "That is unfair. I have built my career on telling stories that matter, on giving people a voice. That includes you." Meghan said, "I already have a voice, Diane. I told you that. I do not need you to give me anything. What I need is for people to stop treating me like I am some puzzle to be solved, some mystery to be unraveled. I am a human being, with feelings, with dignity, and I deserve to be treated as such." Diane walked closer to her. She said, "And I am trying to treat you with dignity, but you have been combative from the moment you sat down. You have questioned my motives. You have insulted my work. You have made assumptions about who I am and what I stand for. And through all of that, I have remained professional and respectful." Meghan stared at her. She said, "Professional. That word again. You hide behind that word like it means something. Like being professional somehow makes everything okay. But you know what? Sometimes being professional is just another way of being cold, of keeping people at a distance so you do not have to actually connect with them." Diane said, "I connect with my guests all the time. That is what makes these interviews meaningful. But connection requires trust. And right now, you do not trust me at all." Meghan said, "Why should I trust you? Give me one good reason. You work for the same industry that has spent years tearing me down. You are part of the same system that has profited off my pain. So tell me, Diane, why on earth should I trust you?" Diane took a deep breath. She said, "Because despite everything you think about me and about this industry, I am sitting here right now trying to have an honest conversation with you. I am not attacking you. I am not trying to trap you. I am simply trying to understand your perspective. That should count for something." Meghan said, "It does not count for anything if the end result is the same. You edit this interview. You choose what clips to show. You craft the narrative, and no matter what I say here today, you will make it fit whatever story you want to tell." Diane shook her head. She said, "That is not how I work. I have never manipulated interviews to fit a predetermined narrative. I let the conversation speak for itself." Meghan said, "Every interview is manipulated, Diane. The questions you choose to ask, the questions you choose not to ask, the way you frame things, the expressions you make. It is all manipulation. Maybe you do not see it that way because you have been doing it for so long it feels natural to you. But it is manipulation nonetheless." Diane's patience was wearing thin. You could hear it in her voice now. She said, "If you truly believe that, then why did you agree to this interview in the first place? If you think it is all manipulation and you do not trust the process, why are you here?" Meghan paused. For the first time, she seemed caught off guard by a question. She said, "I came here because I was told this would be different. I was told that you were someone who would treat me fairly. Clearly, I was wrong." Diane said, "You have not given this interview a chance. You walked in here with your guard up, and you have not let it down for even a second. How can we have a fair conversation if you are determined to see everything I do as an attack?" Meghan said, "Maybe my guard is up for a reason. Maybe I have learned that letting my guard down only leads to getting hurt. Did you ever think about that?" Diane said, "Of course I have thought about that. That is exactly why I am trying to create a safe space for this conversation. But you are making that impossible." Meghan laughed bitterly. She said, "A safe space? This is a television studio with cameras and crew members and millions of people who will eventually watch this. There is nothing safe about this space. Nothing." Diane said, "Safe does not mean private. It means respectful. It means honest. It means both of us engaging in good faith. And I have been doing that. You have not." Meghan's eyes flashed. She said, "Good faith? You want to talk about good faith? Let me ask you something, Diane. Did you prepare questions about my charity work, about the actual good things I have done? Or are all your questions about controversy and drama and conflict?" Diane said, "I prepared questions about many aspects of your life, including your charity work. But we have not gotten to any of them because you have been on the offensive since the moment we started." Meghan said, "Maybe I have been on the offensive because I know how this goes. I have done enough interviews to know the game. You start with the softball questions. You make the guests feel comfortable. And then, when their guard is down, you go for the jugular. You ask the question that you really wanted to ask all along, the one designed to make headlines." Diane said, "That is a very cynical view of what I do." Meghan said, "It is a realistic view. And if you are honest with yourself, you know I am right." Diane said, "What I know is that you came here expecting the worst, and because of that, you are determined to make this interview fail. That is not on me. That is on you." Meghan stepped forward again. Her voice got louder. She said, "How dare you? How dare you put this on me? I am not the one with the power here. You are. You control everything about this situation. The set, the cameras, the questions, the final product. I control nothing. So do not you dare try to blame me for this disaster." Diane raised her voice too. Not yelling, but firm. She said, "You control how you respond. You control whether you choose to engage respectfully or whether you choose to be hostile. Those are your choices. And so far, you have chosen hostility at every turn." Meghan said, "I am being honest. If you think that is hostile, maybe you are not used to people being honest with you." Diane said, "There is a difference between being honest and being antagonistic. You have crossed that line multiple times." Meghan said, "And there is a difference between being professional and being passive-aggressive. You have crossed that line too." The producer stepped forward. He tried to interrupt. He said, "Ladies, maybe we should take that break now." Both Diane and Meghan ignored him. They were locked in now. Diane said, "I have not been passive-aggressive. I have been direct. I have been clear. And I have been patient, more patient than most people would be in this situation." Meghan said, "Patient? You think you are being patient? You are being condescending. Every word out of your mouth drips with condescension, like you are talking to a child who does not understand how the world works." Diane said, "If I am coming across that way, it is only because you are acting like someone who came here to pick a fight rather than have a conversation." Meghan said, "Maybe I did come here to pick a fight. Did you consider that? Maybe I am tired of being polite, tired of playing nice, tired of pretending like everything is okay when it is not." Diane said, "Then what do you want, Meghan? What is the point of all this? What are you hoping to accomplish?" Meghan said, "I want people to see the truth. I want them to see how people like you operate, how you pretend to care while really just serving your own interests. Diane said, "That is not the truth. That is your version of the truth. And it is based on assumptions and bitterness, not on anything I have actually done or said here today." Meghan said, "I do not need you to tell me what is true and what is not. I know my own experience. I know what I have been through. And I know that people like you are part of the problem." Diane said, "People like me? You keep saying that. People like you. As if you know me, as if you have any idea who I am or what I stand for. You have put me in a box based on my profession, and you refuse to see me as anything other than an enemy. That is prejudice, Meghan. Plain and simple." Meghan's mouth dropped open. She said, "Did you just accuse me of prejudice? Me? After everything I have been through? After all the actual prejudice and discrimination I have faced? You have some nerve." Diane said, "I am not comparing our experiences. I am pointing out that you are judging me without knowing me. That is a fact." Meghan said, "I know enough. I know that you make your living off other people's stories, other people's pain. You are a vulture, Diane. Maybe a polite one, maybe a professional one, but a vulture nonetheless." The room went completely silent. Everyone heard it. Diane's face went pale, then it went red. She said, "That is enough. I have been patient. I have been understanding. I have tried everything to make this work. But I will not stand here and be insulted like this. Not in my own studio. Not on my own show." Meghan said, "Oh, there it is. There is the real Diane Sawyer. The one who cannot handle being challenged. The one who only wants guests who bow down and kiss the ring." Diane said, "Challenging me is fine. Disrespecting me is not. And you have crossed that line multiple times now. I am asking you one more time to either engage in this conversation respectfully or we end this right now." Meghan said, "You want to end it? Fine. End it. Kick me out. Prove my point about how this whole industry works. The second someone does not play by your rules, you shut them down. You silence them." Diane said, "I am not silencing you. You have had plenty of opportunity to speak. You have chosen to use that opportunity to attack me personally rather than share anything meaningful about your own life or experiences." Meghan said, "Because my life and experiences are none of your business. That is what you do not understand. Just because I am in the public eye does not mean I owe you or anyone else access to my private thoughts and feelings." Diane said, "Then why are you here? Seriously, if you do not want to share anything, if you do not want to have a conversation, why did you come to a talk show?" Meghan said, "I told you why. I was misled. I was told this would be different." Diane said, "The only thing that is different here is your behavior. I have treated you exactly how I treat every guest, with respect and professionalism. You are the one who has been different. You are the one who has made this impossible." Meghan took a step back. She looked around at the crew, at the cameras, at the lights. Then she looked back at Diane. She said, "You know what? You are right about one thing. This is impossible because you live in a bubble where you think you are helping people by putting them on television and asking them questions. But you are not helping anyone. You are exploiting them." Diane's jaw clenched. She said, "I have given countless people a platform to tell their stories. Stories that needed to be told. Stories that changed laws. Stories that saved lives. Do not you dare diminish that work." Meghan said, "Those people probably had no other choice. They came to you because they were desperate, because they needed their voices heard, and you were their only option. I am not desperate, Diane. I do not need you, and that is what really bothers you. Is it not?" Diane said, "What bothers me is that you are wasting everyone's time here. My time, your time, the crew's time. We could be having a meaningful conversation right now. Instead, you are grandstanding and playing victim." Meghan's face went dark. She said, "Playing victim? Did you really just say that to me? After everything I have been through, after the death threats and the racist attacks and the constant media harassment, you think I am playing victim?" Diane said, "I think you are using your very real struggles as a shield to avoid any accountability for your own actions. That is what I think." Meghan said, "Accountability? What exactly do I need to be accountable for, Diane? Please enlighten me." Diane said, "How about the way you have treated people around you? The staff members who have come forward with complaints? The family members you have cut off? Those are legitimate questions that people have." Meghan's voice got dangerously quiet. She said, "Those are lies, fabrications. Stories planted by people who want to destroy me. And the fact that you are bringing them up right now tells me everything I need to know about your agenda here. Diane said, "They are not lies just because you say they are. Multiple sources have corroborated these stories. That makes them newsworthy. That makes them fair game for discussion." Meghan said, "Multiple sources. You mean anonymous sources? People who hide behind anonymity so they can say whatever they want without any consequences? That is your standard for truth?" Diane said, "When multiple independent sources tell the same story, yes, that carries weight. That is basic journalism." Meghan said, "It is basic character assassination. That is what it is. You are no different than the tabloids, Diane. You just have a nicer set and better lighting." Diane said, "That is absurd. We have standards. We verify information. We do not just print gossip." Meghan said, "You are printing gossip right now by bringing up these so-called complaints, by giving credence to anonymous sources who have an axe to grind. You are doing exactly what the tabloids do. You are just pretending it is journalism." Diane said, "If these stories are false, then tell your side. That is why you are here, to set the record straight. But instead of doing that, you are attacking me." Meghan said, "Because you do not deserve to hear my side. You have already made up your mind about me. Everyone has. So what is the point? No matter what I say, it will be twisted. It will be used against me. So why bother?" Diane said, "That is a cop-out. If you have the truth on your side, then speak it. Let people judge for themselves." Meghan said, "People have already judged. That is the problem. They judged me before they even knew me. They judged me based on my background, my race, my nationality. They decided I was not good enough, and nothing I do will ever change that." Diane said, "Some people may have judged you unfairly. I am not denying that. But you cannot paint everyone with the same brush. There are people who genuinely want to understand you, who want to hear your story. But you are pushing them away." Meghan said, "I am protecting myself." "There is a difference," Diane said. "Protecting yourself by alienating everyone around you? That is not protection. That is isolation. And it is self-destructive." Meghan stared at her. She said, "Now you are my therapist? Is that what is happening here? You think you can psychoanalyze me?" Diane said, "I am making an observation based on everything you have said and done since you got here. You are angry, you are defensive, and you are determined to see everyone as an enemy. That is not healthy." Meghan said, "You do not get to tell me what is healthy. You do not know me. You do not know my life." Diane said, "You are right. I do not know you, because you will not let anyone know you. You hide behind accusations and anger. You push people away before they can get close, and then you wonder why you feel alone." Meghan's hands were shaking now. She said, "You have no right to say these things to me." Diane said, "I have every right. You came on my show. You agreed to this interview. That means we have a conversation, and sometimes conversations include difficult truths." Meghan said, "Difficult truths? You mean your opinions, your judgments, your assumptions about who I am and what I need. That is not truth, Diane. That is arrogance." Diane said, "Call it what you want, but someone needs to tell you that the way you are handling things is not working. It is making everything worse, for you and for everyone around you." Meghan stepped forward. She was right in Diane's face now. She said, "You do not care about me. You do not care about what is best for me. You care about your ratings. You care about getting a viral moment. You care about being able to say that you took down Meghan Markle on national television. That is what this is really about." Diane did not back down. She said, "If that is what you think, then you are not nearly as perceptive as you believe you are. I have no interest in taking you down, but I also have no interest in coddling you. You are an adult. You made choices. Those choices have consequences. And part of being in the public eye is being willing to discuss those choices." Meghan said, "I do not owe the public anything. I do not owe you anything. And I certainly do not owe you an explanation for how I choose to live my life." Diane said, "Then why are you here? For the third time, I am asking you, if you do not want to talk about your life, if you do not want to answer questions, if you do not want to engage with the public, then what is the point of this?" Meghan said, "The point is to expose people like you, to show the world how this system works, how people are invited onto shows like this under the guise of having their voices heard. But really, it is just an ambush, a setup, a trap." Diane's voice got cold. She said, "This is not an ambush. This is not a setup. This is a woman who came onto my show and has spent the entire time being hostile, aggressive, and insulting, and I am done with it." Meghan said, "Oh, you are done? Well, guess what? So am I. I am done with you. I am done with this interview. And I am done with this whole charade." Diane said, "Fine, then leave. Nobody is forcing you to stay." Meghan said, "I will leave, but not before I tell you exactly what I think of you and this whole operation. You sit here in your expensive clothes in your fancy studio and you pretend like you are some champion of truth, but you are not. You are just another cog in the machine, another person profiting off the misery of others. And the worst part is you actually believe your own hype. You actually think you are doing something noble." Diane said, "Get out." Meghan said, "Excuse me?" Diane said, "Get out. This interview is over. I am not going to stand here and listen to you insult me and my career anymore. You have made your feelings clear. Now leave." Meghan laughed. She said, "You are kicking me out? That is your move? That is how you handle someone who does not worship at your feet?" Diane turned to the producer. She said, "Please escort our guest out of the studio. This interview is terminated." The producer hesitated. He looked between Diane and Meghan. He said, "Are you sure?" Diane said, "I am absolutely sure. This interview is over." Meghan said, "This is unbelievable. You invite me here. You attack me with your questions and your judgments. And when I defend myself, you throw me out. This is exactly what I was talking about. This is exactly the kind of abuse of power that I have been subjected to over and over again." Diane said, "The only person who has been abusive here is you. From the moment you walked in, you have been rude, disrespectful, and combative. I tried to work with you. I tried to have a civil conversation. You made that impossible. So yes, I am asking you to leave. And if you refuse, security will escort you out." Meghan said, "Security? You are going to have security remove me? This is insane." Diane said, "What is insane is that we have wasted an hour on this disaster of an interview. An hour that could have been spent having a real conversation, an hour that could have been productive. Instead, you chose to turn this into a circus. Well, the circus is over. Time to go." Meghan looked around at the crew. She said, "You are all seeing this, right? You are all witnesses to how she is treating me. This is abuse. This is bullying. And you are all just standing there, letting it happen." Nobody on the crew said anything. They looked uncomfortable. They looked away. The producer said, "Meghan, I think it is best if you leave now." Meghan said, "I cannot believe this. I cannot believe you people. You all make me sick." Diane said, "That is enough. You need to leave. Now." Meghan grabbed her purse. She said, "I am leaving. But this is not over. People are going to hear about this. They are going to know how I was treated here, how you ambushed me and then kicked me out when I would not play your games." Diane said, "Tell whatever story you want. The truth is on tape. Everything that happened here is recorded. So go ahead. Spin it however you like. People can watch and decide for themselves who was out of line." Meghan started walking toward the exit. Then she turned back one more time. She said, "You know what your problem is, Diane? You have been doing this for so long that you have forgotten what it is like to be on the other side, to be the person in the hot seat, to be vulnerable. You have gotten so comfortable in your position of power that you have lost all empathy, all compassion. You are just a bully with a microphone." Diane said, "And you are just someone who cannot handle being asked legitimate questions, who cannot handle any criticism or accountability, who plays victim whenever things do not go your way. I have interviewed hundreds of people who have been through far worse than you, and none of them behaved the way you have today. That should tell you something." Meghan said, "It tells me that they were broken, that they let people like you break them. Well, I'm not broken, and I will never let people like you break me." Diane said, "Nobody is trying to break you. We were trying to have a conversation, but you came here with an agenda. You came here looking for a fight, and you got one. Congratulations. I hope it was worth it." Meghan turned to leave. As she walked toward the door, she said over her shoulder, "This will be the last interview you ever do. By the time I am done telling people about this, your career will be over. Nobody will trust you. Nobody will want to come on your show. You just ended yourself, Diane." Diane watched her go. She said, "Get her out of here." 2 security guards appeared. They did not touch Meghan, but they walked on either side of her, guiding her toward the exit. Meghan kept talking. She said, "This is unbelievable. You are all going to regret this. Every single one of you. I have lawyers. I have people who will make sure the truth comes out. "You cannot silence me." The security guards opened the door. Meghan walked through it, still talking. Her voice faded as she got further away. The door closed. The studio was silent. Diane stood there for a moment. Her chest was rising and falling. She was breathing hard. The adrenaline was pumping through her. She looked at the camera. Then she looked at the crew. She said, "Did we get all of that?" The cameraman nodded. He said, "Every second." Diane said, "Good. Make sure those tapes are secured. I want everything backed up. Multiple copies. She just threatened me, and I want documentation of everything that happened here." The producer walked over. He said, "Are you okay?" Diane nodded slowly. She said, "I am fine. That was one of the most bizarre interviews I have ever done, and I have done a lot of interviews." The producer said, "She was completely out of control." Diane said, "She came here with an agenda. From the very beginning, she was not interested in having a conversation. She was interested in creating a scene, and that is exactly what she did." One of the crew members said, "What do we do with the footage?" Diane thought about it. She said, "We need to review it carefully, see what is usable. But honestly, I do not know if we can air any of this. It was so hostile, so unproductive. I am not sure the audience needs to see that." The producer said, "But it is news now. She is going to go out there and tell her version of what happened. We need to be able to show what actually happened." Diane said, "You are right. We will need to put something together, but it needs to be handled carefully. We need to be fair. Show both sides. Let people make up their own minds." Another crew member said, "She called you a bully." Diane said, "I heard her. She said a lot of things, most of them untrue, but that is fine. The tape does not lie. People can watch and see for themselves who is being reasonable and who is being irrational." The producer said, "Do you want to record a statement? Something to provide context?" Diane shook her head. She said, "Not right now. I need some time to process this. That was intense. More intense than I expected." The crew started packing up equipment. Diane sat back down in her chair. She put her head in her hands for a moment. Then she looked up. She said, "In 30 years of doing this job, I have never had to ask someone to leave. Never. But she left me no choice. Absolutely no choice." The producer said, "You handled it as well as anyone could have. You were patient. You were professional. You tried everything to make it work." Diane said, "I did try. I really did. But she was determined to make me the villain, and there is nothing I could have done to change that. She had made up her mind about me before she even walked in here." One of the crew members said, "She seemed really angry." Diane said, "She is angry. At the world, at her circumstances, at everyone who has ever questioned her or criticized her. And she took all of that anger and dumped it on me. Because I was here. Because I was asking questions. Because I represented everything she hates about the media." The producer said, "What do you think will happen now?" Diane said, "She will go on social media. She will tell her followers that she was ambushed, that she was mistreated, that I was horrible to her. Her fans will believe her. They will attack me. They will attack the show. And we will have to deal with the fallout. But at least we have the tape. At least we have proof of what really happened." The cameraman said, "Should we be worried about her threats?" Diane said, "I am not worried about her threats. She is angry and she is lashing out. But at the end of the day, the truth is on our side. We did nothing wrong. We invited her on the show in good faith. We tried to have a respectful conversation. She is the one who turned it into a disaster." Diane stood up. She smoothed down her jacket. She said, "Let me know when the footage is ready to review. We need to figure out what to do with this. But for now, I need a break." That was exhausting. As Diane walked off the set, the crew looked at each other. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then one of them said, "That was the craziest thing I have ever seen." Another one said, "I cannot believe she called Diane a vulture to her face." The producer said, "She called her a lot of things, none of them fair. Diane was a complete professional through the whole thing. She kept her cool, even when Meghan was totally out of line." Someone else said, "Do you think Meghan will really try to sue or something?" The producer said, "She can try, but she does not have a case. Everything that happened was recorded, and it clearly shows that she was the aggressor. She was hostile from the start." Diane gave her every opportunity to have a normal conversation, and she refused. The crew finished packing up. The lights were turned off. The studio that had been so bright and alive just minutes before was now dark and quiet. The energy that had filled the space was gone. All that remained was the memory of what had just happened. The confrontation, the accusations, the anger, and the moment when one of the most respected journalists in the world had to ask a guest to leave her show for the first time in her entire career. Outside the studio, Meghan was on her phone. She was typing furiously, posting to social media, telling her version of the story to millions of followers. She was angry, she was righteous, and she was convinced that she had been wronged. Inside the studio, Diane was sitting in her office. She was quiet, she was thoughtful, and she was confident that when people saw what really happened, they would understand. They would see that she had done everything right, that she had been patient and professional, and that sometimes, no matter how hard you try, some conversations are just impossible.